The cases of the January 6 protesters are one by one moving to final adjudication. And as we look closer at them, we can see in them the face of American justice, or perhaps I should say injustice. The injustice not merely of the Biden administration, but also of these judges. In this case, I'm going to be talking about an Obama appointee named Randolph Moss, Judge Randolph Moss. The defendant whose case I'm focusing on is Paul Hodgkins, 38 years old, from Tampa, Florida. And I'm now going to read from the court documents talking about what this man actually did. Paul Hodgkins entered the U.S. Capitol building at approximately 2:50 p.m. on January 6th. Around 3 p.m., Hodgkins entered the Senate chamber, walked among the desks, and then removed his eye goggles. He took a selfie-style photograph with his cell phone and walked down the Senate well, the Senate pit, where, a few feet away, several individuals were shouting, praying, and cheering using a bullhorn. Hodgkins walked toward the individuals and remained standing with them while they continued commanding the attention of others. At approximately 3:15 p.m., Hodgkins exited the Senate chamber and the U.S. Capitol building. So that's what this guy did. He was wearing a Trump t-shirt, he was carrying a Trump flag, and he took a selfie. He's a nonviolent guy. He came unarmed. He didn't harm anyone, and as far as we know, he didn't touch anyone. And yet he's portrayed by the prosecutor with the ultimate acquiescence of the judge as a dangerous threat to democracy. Now, the judge at one point does ask the prosecutors, he says, this guy is not a violent guy. He didn't do anything violent. And the prosecutors basically say, well, yes, he did. That's because he was standing in a group that was generating or causing an intimidating influence. So the group that is supposedly shouting and praying is, according to the prosecutor, exercising intimidation. And this guy was just standing there, but he's found, in a sense, culpable for the actions of the group. And then the judge says, was anyone actually, hurt, harmed in any way by this man? And the prosecutor goes, yes, of course. Who? Well, he says, well, think of all the people. He says, think of all the lawmakers, the staff, the law enforcement who were trapped inside the building and hiding. It was the collective influence of this crowd that made them do that. And the prosecutor says many of them will bear, quote, emotional scars, end quote, for the rest of their lives. Now, you might think that the judge at this point would be like, are you serious? But no, the judge himself gets caught up in this, and he goes along with the frenzy. I'm not going to quote him. This is Obama appointee, as I say, Randolph Moss. And you get an idea of what's really bothering him. It comes clearly out in what he says, and I'm quoting him. To make matters worse, Mr. Hodgkins stood next to the dais of the United States Senate, in the well of the Senate, and raised the red flag that said Trump 2020 in large white letters. The symbolism of that act is unmistakable. This is the judge talking. He was making a claim on the floor of the United States Senate, not with an American flag, but with a flag declaring his loyalty to a single individual over the nation. How does the judge know that? How does the judge know that he is somehow choosing the individual over the nation just because he thinks that Trump really won the election? The judge goes on, that act captured the threat to democracy that we all witnessed that day. What's the threat to democracy? Trump is one of the candidates running for election of one of the two major parties. To believe that he won and to go to Washington, go to the Capitol to demand accountability, that's a threat to democracy? Or is that an exercise of democracy? Is it a threat to the Constitution or an exercise of your First Amendment rights under the Constitution? And the judge gives this guy, Paul Hodgkins, 8 months in prison. He's going to be a lifelong felon. As he himself told the judge, I'm going to lose my job at the auto shop. I'm going to be moved out of my rental apartment. So you're ruining this man's life for doing what? And then, of course, on social media, you have these leftists. Here's Amy Siskind, 8 months for trying to violently overthrow our government. No, Amy, this was not a violent man. He didn't do anything violent. Why don't you kind of harness your commentary to actual facts? So the bloodlust of the left, the lies of the prosecution, and the emotional blindness of the judge, either he's a willing accomplice or he is, in a sense, a kind of someone who just can't see. He's so removed from reality that he can't understand what would motivate a man like Paul Hodgkins to do what he did. And so here's a guy who is facing, you may say, he's a political prisoner of sorts. And for just speaking his mind and showing a little bit of daring and hurting no one, here's a man who sees the rest of his life ruined.